This man was a highly respected American general and later statesman who would play a pivotal role in US military and foreign policy over 4 decades. Wounded in Vietnam, after the war, he helped reshape the modern US Army and would play a key role in planning the liberation of Kuwait, all whilst enjoying a lifelong love of calypso music. Today, we're looking at the life, campaigns, and most importantly, the medals of Colin Powell. I've not seen a final ribbon rack for Powell. This is possibly due to him retiring in 1993 and receiving awards after he had left the army and was now a civilian. Therefore, he'd have no need to update his old army uniform with new ribbons. That said, we do have an example of his ribbons here, dated to around his last year of service in 93. To this, I've added a further ribbon award, which I've seen pictures of him in also. So, up to that point, it seems Powell was awarded a total of 15 medals or ribbons, many of them multiple times. They include 9 medals for distinguished service or bravery with devices, a wound award, 2 single service or campaign medals with devices, 2 service ribbons, and 1 foreign award. Bear in mind, however, that these aren't all of Powell's medals, and we will explain and uncover more later in the video. So who was he? Colin Luther Powell was born in April 1937 in New York City to Jamaican immigrant parents. His father was a shipping clerk, and his mother worked in the textile industry as a seamstress, making labels for clothing. As a child, he was raised in the South Bronx and educated in state or public school. Many people in the community Powell grew up with at the time were Jewish, Italian, or from the Caribbean. Like many immigrant parents to the United States, his mother and father pushed their children to succeed, stressing the importance of education and personal achievement. At school, however, Powell was a mediocre student, which worried his parents. He preferred reading comic books over literature and spent his free time playing outdoors or at the Tiffany Theatre watching cowboy movies. What he lacked in academic success, he made up for in good behaviour. Powell avoided trouble on the streets and stayed away from drugs and drinking, unlike some other kids in his area. He was raised with a strong sense of self-respect and believed a healthy sense of shame could be a powerful motivator in life. Powell recalled, "The worst days of my life were not when I got a spanking, but when I did something that disappointed my mother and father." During high school, he worked at a local furniture store, where he picked up Yiddish slang from the Jewish owners. Powell said that one of the most touching periods of his youth was when one of the owners encouraged him to progress in life, saying he shouldn't stay working in their shop forever. "I was so touched that he thought enough of me to tell me that I had the potential to do other things in life," Powell later said. Powell described himself as a C average student, and after graduating from high school in 1954, progressed to City College of New York. Initially, to please his parents, he took a civil engineering degree, but basically found it as dull as dishwater, and instead transferred to study geology. Whilst at City College, he joined the Reserve Officer Training Course Programme, ROTC, and a fraternal cadet unit called the Pershing Rifles, known for its fancy rifle drills. Although no great athlete, in ROTC, Powell found his calling, and unlike many servicemen, would particularly relish drill and parade. "I found a new family. I never lost my old family, but now I was getting older, I needed a new family. This was my college family and was my military family. So I found something that I did well, and I loved doing in ROTC. And that's what I stuck with." No doubt if Powell joined the British Army, he would have applied to have been a guardsman from the Household Division, like this chap here, guarding the Tower of London. He would eventually become the drill master and commander of the entire company, developing a special expertise in solo rifle twirling. At the time, to receive a Reserve Army commission at the end of a 4-year programme, Students in the ROTC took a series of elective military courses along with their academic curriculum and attended 6 weeks of summer camp at a regular army base. During his first 2 college summers, Powell would earn extra money working at the local Coca-Cola and Pepsi bottling plants, typical student summer jobs such as mopping floors, etc. His 3rd and 4th summers he would spend training with the ROTC at an army base. He would win a Best Cadet in Company prize at Fort Bragg on one of those camps, being awarded a set of pens mounted on a marble base which he would keep through his entire career. Although on the academic side, Powell muddled through with C-average grades, as a soldier he would thrive and graduated as a distinguished military graduate and head of the Corps of Cadets at City College of New York. As a distinguished military graduate, he was eligible for a regular army commission and 3-year active duty rather than 2 years activated with the Army Reserve. Powell stated, "I didn't join the army to become a general. I didn't join the army to get to the top. I joined the army because I loved it." On the 10th of June 1958, he received a commission as an Army Second Lieutenant and was sent to Fort Benning in Georgia on an infantry officer basic course. Whilst there, he experienced issues of segregation and prejudice which he hadn't witnessed before. After witnessing this, Powell then assessed his future. He concluded, "I wanted above all to succeed at my army career. I do not intend to give way to self-destructive rage, no matter how provoked. If people in the South insisted on living by crazy rules, then I would play the hand dealt to me for now. If I was to be confined to one end of the playing field, then I was going to be a star on that part of the field. Nothing that happened off post, none of the indignities, none of the injustices, was going to inhibit my performance." Powell refused to see himself as a victim and believed in leadership by example and proving his proficiency to others. He stated, "In those early years, I was looked at as a black lieutenant, and I just said to myself, before this is through, I'm going to be the best lieutenant you ever saw. You will not categorize me as the best black lieutenant you ever saw." Powell would attend Ranger School and learn to parachute. In 1959, Powell was assigned to Company B, 2nd Armoured Rifle Battalion, 48th Infantry, 3rd Armoured Division, based near Frankfurt in West Germany, as a platoon leader. In December of that year, he was promoted to 1st Lieutenant. During the summer of '61, he decided to make a full-time career of the Army. In November 1961, Powell met and began dating his future wife, Alma Johnson. Powell next served as a company commander of the 5th Infantry Division at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, where he was promoted to the rank of captain in 1962. In August '62, he received notice that he would be deployed to Vietnam, so proposed to Alma and married that same month. They would go on to have 3 children. From December 1962 until November '63, Powell was assigned to Vietnam, where he served as an advisor to a South Vietnamese infantry battalion. Only around 16,000 US advisors were in Vietnam during this time. As part of an early group of advisors sent out by JFK, he arrived in Saigon on Christmas Day '62, having been a captain for all of 2.5 months. The 400-man battalion from the Arvin 1st Division he mentored would mainly be based in the vicinity of Quang Tri Province and the Ashore Valley, interacting with the Montagnard tribesmen. Powell and the Arvin would conduct counterinsurgency operations against the Viet Cong. A major task of the troops would be destroying property that might be useful to the enemy. Out in the field, they would be resupplied by helicopter every 2 weeks. Operating remotely, they would be engaged in intermittent jungle warfare with the Viet Cong during that time, patrolling, coming under ambush, sniper and mortar fire. Powell recalled, "There was no front, no ground gained or lost, just endless bloody slogging on a trail leading to nowhere." At a location called Bi Luang, Powell had a close brush with death when his position was mortared, wounding 9 other soldiers. The incident occurred when, against Powell's advice, the battalion commander decided to return fire against Viet Cong positions, even though they were unsure of their exact locations. All this did was highlight their own positions to the Viet Cong. Powell stated, "A mortar round hit a tree above on its way to my head, and the explosion went around me in a cone. If that tree hadn't have been there, then that would have been the end of my military career and my life." Whilst patrolling to a local Special Forces camp in late July 1963, he was wounded by a punji stick, buried in a shallow hole and covered in buffalo dung. Stepping on the stick, the point grazed the thick rubber sole of his boot, pierced the canvas at the instep, and went straight through his foot. "I didn't realise how injured I was. I just knew I'd punctured my foot. It was so quick I didn't realise how serious it was, and we just kept marching to a Special Forces camp. In 15 minutes, I realised I had done something real bad. In 30 minutes, I had difficulty walking and had to use a stick." Arriving at the SF camp, he was evacuated by helicopter for medical treatment. He received a Purple Heart for this. After recovering from his injury, he was reassigned to the Division Staff Operations Office in Hue, operating at the Hue Citadel Airfield. Now working close to the flagpole, so to speak, at HQ, for the first time he began seeing puffed-up reports made by headquarters staff of actions that his former unit was involved in on the ground. This would make Powell cynical of statisticians and supposed experts. In later life, he would write, "Don't be buffaloed by experts and elites. Experts often possess more data than judgment. Elites can become so inbred that they produce haemophiliacs who bleed to death as soon as they get nicked by the real world." i.e., policies from ivory towers can have an adverse effect on those in the field or those at the coalface. This led to one of Powell's later principles: the commander in the field is always right, and the rear echelon wrong, unless proven otherwise. Powell would return to Fort Benning in Georgia for 3.5 years and complete the Infantry Officer Advanced course, being promoted to Major in 1966 and then becoming an instructor at infantry school. In early 1968, he graduated from Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Powell would deploy again to Vietnam for his second tour in June 1968 with the Americal Division. In the 5 years or so since his first tour, America's involvement in the Vietnam War had escalated dramatically. Powell would serve as Assistant Chief of Staff of Operations. At the time, the Americal Division was the largest US Army division in Vietnam. During one incident in his tour, he travelled in a helicopter to the site of a recently discovered enemy arms cache with the General Commanding and Chief of Staff of the 23rd Americal Division. The landing zone was in a triple canopy jungle near the Laotian border. As the helicopter descended, the rotor blades clipped a tree and the aircraft lost lift, falling roughly 100 feet to the ground. The crash caused major damage. The engine dropped through the passenger compartment, blades broke apart, the fuselage distorted, and there was a very real risk of explosion or fire. Powell himself suffered a fractured ankle in the crash. Despite his injury, he exited the wreckage, then repeatedly re-entered the burning aircraft to rescue his comrades. The division commander, Charles M. Geddes, the chief of staff, the pilot and the aide. For his heroic actions, Powell was awarded the Soldier's Medal, one of the highest awards for non-combat heroism, in December 1968. Although Powell had believed in the Vietnam mission during his first tour, by the second tour he and other officers came to the realization that the communists, with their birth rate and determination, would eventually beat us. McNamara knew the cost of everything and the worth of nothing, Powell said. We had some senior military leaders who did not seem to understand the nature of the conflict they'd gotten themselves into. Rather than a fight of communism versus democracy, Powell realized it was about nationalism. With a fixation on body count, Powell also noticed a corruption creeping in by leadership of counting and inflating numbers. During his tour in Vietnam, Powell was assigned to review reports concerning troop conduct in the area of My Lai. He faced later criticism from some observers who felt his findings downplayed or dismissed early allegations of misconduct. Powell would defend his assessment, stating at the time he was unaware of the full extent and scale of the incident itself. Later speaking of Vietnam, Powell stated, "When it was over, we were seen as an army that appeared as a loser in this war. We were shaken to our core. We had lost a generation of leaders. We had the scandal of My Lai. We ended the draft. There was an estrangement between the American people and its military. But I was a professional soldier, and it was my job to work in that world and fix it." When he returned home in July 1969, he asked to go to graduate school and was sent to George Washington University for 2 years. During his time there, Powell witnessed riots and clashes between police and protesters over the war. He graduated with an MBA in Government and Business Administration in July 1971. Promoted to Lieutenant Colonel in 1970, after his MBA, he was sent on a White House fellowship as an Operations Research Analyst. After a year in Korea commanding a battalion of troops in the 2nd Infantry Division, Powell was then selected to National War College for advanced military schooling. Promoted colonel, he was then assigned as commander of Fort Campbell in Kentucky, in charge of 3 battalions and 2,500 men. During his time commanding troops in the early 70s, Powell faced significant challenges in addressing morale and other internal issues amongst his troops. He would learn many key leadership lessons which he would later apply. The day soldiers stop bringing you their problems is the day you have stopped leading them. They have either lost confidence that you can help them or concluded that you do not care. Either case is a failure of leadership. In his spare time, Powell enjoyed Broadway musicals, calypso music, and reportedly even ABBA. Through the rest of the 1970s, Powell steadily rose up the ranks. In 1979, he was promoted Brigadier General and became Executive Assistant to the Secretary of Defense. From 1981, Colin Powell held a series of further influential roles which shaped US military and foreign policy. This included a role as Senior Military Assistant to the Deputy Secretary and then Secretary of Defense, Caspar Weinberger. Powell was promoted to Major General in 1983 and Lieutenant General in 1986. He became a Corps Commander in Germany and served as Deputy Commander of US Forces Command. In 1987, he was promoted National Security Advisor to Ronald Reagan and would play a key role in the last years of the Cold War. After a short stint as Commander of US Army Forces Command, he was promoted General. In 1989, Powell became the youngest and first black chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under President George Bush. During his tenure, he oversaw major military operations, including the US invasion of Panama and the Gulf War, advocating the Powell Doctrine, which emphasized the use of overwhelming force and clear objectives. In between planning various wars, Powell also loved tinkering on old second-hand Volvos. In one interview, he said he had bought, repainted and repaired and resold some 30 Volvos in his lifetime, a practice which began when he revived one so his son could have a car in college. In later years, as computers came out, he would also be a bit of a computer nerd. Although he didn't read much as a teenager, in later years he would become an avid reader, especially of military history, in addition to being a fan of DIY around the house. I can just imagine him tinkering under the sink with a bit of calypso music on in the background. After retiring from the military in 1993, Powell wrote a best-selling memoir, emerged as a respected public speaker, and was widely discussed as a potential presidential candidate, though he chose not to run. In 2001, he became Secretary of State under President George W. Bush, playing a central role in US foreign policy following 9/11. His period of office would be marked by internal conflicts reportedly with Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld. Powell's 2003 speech to the United Nations, making the case for the Iraq War based on flawed intelligence, became one of the most controversial moments of his career. Powell later called the speech a blot on his record, saying that it was based on bad intelligence and that he had urged caution in private. Reading about his time in the political arena, it seems the general consensus from historians and critics who observed him was that although clearly Powell was a proficient, highly competent and principled soldier, when it came to the cutthroat world of politics, he was slightly out of his depth and perhaps even naive, and allowed himself to be outmaneuvered and isolated by established, slick political operators such as Dick Cheney. For Powell's US awards we have Defence Distinguished Service Medal with multiple oak leaf clusters, Army Distinguished Service Medal with oak leaf cluster, Defence Superior Service Medal, Legion of Merit with cluster, Soldier's Medal for his actions on the helicopter crash in Vietnam, Bronze Star, Purple Heart for his injury with the punji trap on his first tour, Air Medal for the amount of hours he clocked up on helicopters in Vietnam, Joint Service Commendation Medal, Army Commendation Medal with 2 oak leaf clusters, National Defence Service Medal with star, Vietnam Service Medal with Silver Service Star, Army Service Ribbon, Army Overseas Ribbon, and the South Vietnamese Vietnam Campaign Medal. Confusingly, some of his cluster awards aren't on the ribbon example. Perhaps they were awarded upon retirement. Upon retirement, I've also read he received a Navy Distinguished Service Medal, Air Force Distinguished Service Medal, and Coast Guard Distinguished Service Medal. In 1991, he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom for his role as Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff during the Gulf War. A few years later, he was again awarded the medal with distinction for transforming the armed forces. He also received the Presidential Citizens Medal for his public service and Secretary's Distinguished Service Medal, I guess for his political work. The 2021 Gerald R. Ford Medal for Distinguished Public Service, and lastly, the Congressional Gold Medal. Foreign awards include the Knight Commander of the Most Honourable Order of the Bath, the French Legion of Honour, and Canadian Meritorious Service Cross. I would assume these 3 are for the Gulf War. We also have, interestingly, the Skanderberg Order from Albania and the Order of Stara Planina in the First Order from Bulgaria. Finally, we have the National Order of the Lion from Senegal. At one point, he may also have been awarded a Cross of Gallantry unit citation from South Vietnam. Undoubtedly, Powell received further awards for his continued public work after he retired from both office and the military, but these are a snapshot of his main ones. After stepping down in 2005, Powell remained active in public life, endorsing Barack Obama in the 2008 presidential election and continuing his work in education and civic engagement. Powell passed away in October 2021. To the US military, he would be remembered as a trailblazer, perhaps not as charismatic a leader, say, in the mould of Schwarzkopf, known for his fiery temper, or our swashbuckling own British General de la Billière. Instead, Powell will be viewed as a thoughtful, analytical, and effective commander who inspired and reshaped the US Army, bringing back pride after the trauma of Vietnam. Thanks for watching. I hope you found some value from this, and I'll see you in the next one.